All right, well, welcome everybody. I think we're live. Hope you're all well. Today's date is Saturday, March the 1st, 2025. March Madness begins. So many things happening as usual. And I wanted to share a little bit of information with you guys, share some ideas, go through some of the stuff I've been looking at. I better explain myself for some of my recent posts and ideas that I've been sharing out there. So I figured I would do that with you this evening. I hope you guys are all cozy wherever you find yourselves. Make sure to say hello in the chat. And where to begin? Well, we've been discussing on this show for a long time the history of this network of organizations, non governmental agencies, big banks, roundtable groups, secret societies, cults, trafficking rings, corrupt government officials, etc. We've been talking about that for years on this show, but recently we've been talking about the plight of Canada. You can go back and check out some of the shows I've been doing on that if you want. They're all there in the archive. I've been sharing some rather controversial opinions that could be dangerous opinions, according to some. And I know all of you out there have been probably paying attention to all these happenings in these subjects in your own way for many years, or depending on what time you jumped into this. And you're probably experiencing the same situation as myself, where when you're trying to talk to people who are still, I don't know how, but they are still getting all of their information about the world and how it works and what's really going on from the centrally controlled legacy mainstream media. And a lot of these people refuse to go on any unsafe social media platforms that might just inform them about some information that they've never seen before. And so they are sticking it out on what I call the socialist media platforms, the mainstream social media platforms, the safe ones, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And that's where they're getting their information as well. And not to say that you can't find some good information on those platforms, and not to say that you can't get some good information from time to time from even the fake news media. But anybody who's been at this for any length of time will start to realize that we're dealing with a captured system here in the West. In the West, what that means is Europe and North America specifically. But you could take this even further than that. But just because here we are, I live in Canada. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. If we look at this from, say, the perspective of Canada, America, Australia, sort of, in that niche. And then if you're tuning in from Europe, I don't know if you're still awake over there in Europe, depends on where you are. It's probably be late, but, when we're thinking about the West, I've spoken about this before. I'm not going to make a big podcast about this today, but just, Western civilization, the founding principles and values that built the most free civilization that has offered the most abundance to the world in history. And it has its problems. It has its problems. And so because it has its problems, those problems, which we can get into how they started and who's really responsible. But either way, anytime you have a system like this, corruption can show up. It doesn't really matter what system you try to create. It doesn't matter how you structure your country. Wherever we go, there we are, human beings that are corruptible. The potential for good and evil strikes to the heart of every human being, as Solzhenitsyn says, and I concur with that. And so, to keep it really simple here, because I know I've got new people that are new to this kind of information showing up to this show all the time. So welcome if that's you. Always got to recap some of the basics, but you'll never understand my view of the world because I have my own view of the world that a lot of people, whether they're in the mainstream normie world or whether they're in even the alternative research community world, my opinions, my takes are different and shocking to everybody. And that's just because of the nature of the research that I do, the type of person that I am, and I try to look at things from different perspectives and put out arguments and ideas and theories that will help contrast what you're normally getting. And the disclaimer is always, you must do your own diligence and research to validate these things for yourself. Okay. So let's not get into too many shouting matches in the comments. Let's try to just look at all this objectively. I know everybody's in different places with this stuff, and that's normal. But my thing is, I've been at this for over 20 years in my own personal inquiry. And so 20 years of deep layered, very um, focused research and investigation, just as an amateur, just as a regular person. I don't have any degrees or anything, but I've come to my own, not conclusions, but I've definitely developed my own worldview, my own unique perspective, I think. Um, and so if you hear things that are not in line with the way you see things, try to look at it as, oh, that's a different take. That's a different perspective. At least this is just how I do it. Otherwise, you're going to go absolutely insane trying to police everybody's opinions. Um, it's important to look at things from different perspectives. So I'm only hoping that my show and my contribution to this is just that. It's just a contribution. It's not the final word. It's not the be all and end all. And in the end, only the objective facts of reality are going to win this argument about who's who, who's doing what, what's really going on, what isn't really going on. We're all going to find out, and we are finding out in many ways. But just giving you that little intro here, because I'm now going to be getting into some research from the late, great Dr. John Coleman. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him before. I am bringing him up for a very specific reason. I just want to point you all over to my free online homemade documentary series called Cult of the Medics. I got 10 films in that series so far. And yes, we will continue on that series. I've had a lot of things come up that need to be dealt with before I can focus my entire brain on that. But I will be getting to that eventually. But the main stuff is already there for you guys. You can go to cultofthemedics.com. You can get it. I've got it featured on my Rumble page, and my home right now is Substack, and I've got it up on my Substack page for free, and you can go and check it out. And I highly recommend diving into that one. And I opened up that series in chapter 1 with a speech from Dr. John Coleman. Hopefully, people that have been following my show for years have gone and watched that entire speech. I think it's like an hour and 45 minutes or something. It's very grainy. It's very old. I have a selected clip I want to show you in a little bit here that's going to be very relevant to our subject today. It actually continues on from the section that I put in the series. It's just like it's a continuation. I found it interesting that it literally continues the section I want to get to, which is going to be getting into Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the British Royal Crown Corporation, etc. It's funny how I was like, what's the section that John Coleman was talking about Chatham House? Because you'll know why in a minute, why I want to focus on this. And lo and behold, it's literally the next sentence after the sentence I cut him off in chapter 1, because I wanted to focus on the other bit. And so we're going to go from there. And there's about a 4 or 5 minute video I want to share with you. And then I want to fill in some of the blanks. And then feel free to let me know what's going on in the chat on your end. And let me just make sure. Yeah, audio's working. Good. We should be also live on X. Sorry, guys. I'm always paranoid. I'm doing this show and then something's blowing up in the background. Yes, we are all good. Okay, very good. So, of course, the reason I'm bringing this up and bringing up his research is he did some really key research, and you have to get his book called The Committee of 300. That's kind of where it all starts. That's where it started for a lot of researchers. And then if the thing about that book is, yeah, Coleman gives his opinions and his takes on a lot of the stuff, but he's also just giving you raw research information. And I love researchers like this that just sort of lay it all out. They're like, here's what I think, here's my theory, but here's all the reasons I came to that theory. Here's all the threads I followed. Here's all the sauce, all the receipts. Okay. Because that's super important. We can't just say things. And even when we're speculating, it's okay. I just want to say this. It's okay to speculate when we're talking about something this big. It's okay to not have all the pieces. We're dealing with criminal organizations, underground networks, and secret fraternal orders. Okay. So you're going to have to speculate. You're going to have to connect some dots. This shade always gets thrown at people that do this kind of alternative research, and they get labeled conspiracy theorist, which was a term invented by the CIA to discredit anybody from thinking for themselves. And the problem with that is that it's easy for the people that are getting hit with the mainstream narrative to just toss away any research from anybody that has any level of speculation in it. And they forget to ask the question, well, even though you're speculating on some of the conclusions about how this might work and who's doing it and whatever, is there any actual substantial evidence for those conclusions? It doesn't mean you can always conclude it to the end, but can you show sources for what led you? What were the breadcrumbs that led you to this loaf of bread that you're talking about, which is your overall theory? And people like John Coleman, they did a good job. And there's many names I could mention to lead you in the very similar direction here. But I think we're also just getting information here today. Like we're seeing it in front of our eyes. What's going on? It doesn't take a brain scientist to figure out, like in, say, for example, Canada's situation, right? I brought this up in the last show, that there are groups and organizations that don't hold a specific allegiance to Canada that are running Canada. Okay. Let me just say that again. There are groups and associations that are leading and running this country. I'm talking about the financing. You're thinking, well, the politicians? No. Who finance their campaigns? Who backs them? Who provides them their information sources? And they're like, well, are you talking about the media? Yeah, who gives them their talking points? Why does the media sound like a big chorus no matter where you go? It's actually kind of funny. One of the biggest media companies in Canada is called Chorus Media. I think that's hilarious. Why are they all saying the same things? Look at what's going on in the media right now, talking about Ukraine. You can't look anywhere right now without seeing the same talking points from all of the media, from all of the leadership in Europe, all these people coming out of the woodwork in support of Zelensky because he had some harsh words spoken to him from Trump and JD Vance the other day. And of course, nobody goes to watch the entire 47-minute video. They just watch the clipped out, edited pieces that are shown to them from the media. And then the jump to conclusion map begins. And this is just the same in so many areas. And that's why I'm telling you, if you're still getting the vast majority of your information, which are leading you to your opinions and your beliefs and your conclusions about what's really happening in the world, whether we're talking about the war in Ukraine, whether we're talking about the pandemic a few years ago, whether we're talking about elections, whether we're talking about Canada, whether we're talking about any of this stuff, where do you get your information? Because you're only as good as your information. Your ability to assess and form accurate opinions about what's going on and make even decisions about your life are only as good as the information you get. So what happens if you find out that information that you're getting is not coming from sources that are, let's just put it as mildly and kindly as possible, they're not really on your side. They don't hold an allegiance to you. They have allegiances to the money bags. They got allegiances to other groups and interests. And even if we get into the rabbit hole and we go right down to the level of cults, secret clandestine cults. I mean, what does that do? What if you have people that are in high levels of power, authority, and trust in government, in media, in intelligence communities that are bad actors, that are corrupted, and that have affiliations and allegiances elsewhere? Yeah, they might swear the oath when they get brought into those positions, but is their allegiance truly to Canada, America, and specifically, let's also differentiate this. Are people aware that let's just go with Canada, and this would be the same anywhere. When you say Canada and you say Team Canada, okay, this is a great example. As an average Canadian that's just thinking about, did I go to the grocery store and get those eggs and milk that I needed? How much did I pay for it? Am I going to have a job tomorrow? Did I pay my taxes? How many kids am I gonna have? Did I put them in soccer? Like, when you're on that, like, level of operation, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. We just call that the normal person, the normal average person, the average Canadian. You don't really have a lot of time or even interest to really study these deep subjects, getting into history, getting into normal history, mainstream history, let alone alternative history, looking at politics, local politics, and then geopolitics, which means world politics, getting into these subjects. The average person doesn't have time to go and do that research. So there's a lot of missing pieces. There's gaps of information. And then they just turn on the news or they look around at their social media feeds and they see these repeated messages hitting them over and over again. And they never stop to question where that comes from. Well, if you're in Canada and you're in that place right now, um, and you say the word Canada, are you aware that when your politicians say Canada, it might be true that they mean something completely different because we might be talking about something that is viewed differently by them than the way you view it. So when they're asking you, when our politicians right now who've been on the side of a lot of these foreign interests that I'm talking about that are not beholden to Canada, what happens if those foreign interests have our politicians by the balls? And our politicians have to answer that red phone when it rings and do as they are instructed to do. Just like all those European leaders right now are basically just retweeting the exact same message right now. And we've seen this many times. When they're calling you out and saying, you got to join Team Canada and you got to do this and you got to fly the Ukrainian flag and you got to look at it like this. And you have to ignore all these other people that are asking some questions. They're just literally the most evil words you could come up with. Fascists, Nazis, homophobes, racists, like just the worst of the worst gets thrown at people that dare question these people when all you're doing is questioning them. And so in your mind, you're thinking, I love my country. I've been to a few Canadian hockey games. I cheered for us in the Olympics. That's what a country is. It's a bunch of flags and rites and rituals and our history, I guess. But I'd be here to tell you, well, if you're getting into the alternative, it's not even alternative. This used to be the mainstream. It used to be the knowledge that, well, here is what a country is and what it really means. And then here's the straw man. Here's the corporate level. Here's the crown corporation that all of your politicians swear an oath to. They do not swear an oath to the people of Canada. They swear an allegiance to the British crown. Now, what is the British crown? What is it today? Forget about all the history for now. What is it today? Okay. So these are the kinds of questions that you have to start getting into to open up this research field. And if you don't do that, and then you're going to miss a lot of context as to where someone like me might be coming from when I'm coming in to go, hey, this Mark Carney guy that they're trying to sell you right now to replace Trudeau. It's pretty amazing how he just kind of came out of nowhere, isn't it? And we know nothing about him. And they're trying to tell you in the media right now who he is. And they're leaving a lot of shit out. And I'm shocked that it's working, but it is. It is working on people. Okay. And if we start looking behind the veil, and I'm talking about the surface level here, we don't even have to go too deep to start to find some very serious problems of conflicts of interest and some deep questions. And we could do this with a lot of the people that are posing as your leadership. Okay. When you really look behind the curtain in Canada, and I'll bet you it's the same in a lot of other countries, especially in the West, because we're talking about a 200-year march through the institutions to completely eradicate and replace Western civilization with what's known as the world order. You hear about the world order? Even the fact that it has the word order in it, I mean, that word order to the average normie means, well, yes, we've got to keep our house in order and we need the world to be orderly. So we need people that are going to create an orderly world. That sounds great, Dave. What's your problem? Then I'm going to say yes, but you're applying your logic and reason with your limited experience about how this works to those terms that are being used by these people who, when you investigate just a little bit and you actually study the actions that are taken, forget about what people say. Forget about what people say. Watch what they do. Look at their track record. When you look behind that curtain, you go, wait a minute, this world order thing, it's not the pie in the sky. Let's just fix climate change, unite the world, end wars, and unify the entire world economic and political system under one ring of power. That's the way we're going to keep the world order. You got to realize that there's a massive Game of Thrones that's happening here, where people are looking for the same thing that humans have been seeking since Genghis Khan all the way through history. And that never went away because humans haven't gone away. And I'm not advocating for humans to go away. It's just that we have a dark side as well, where we can be drawn towards power. This was a oh, am I back here? Okay. This was a metaphor that was brought up in the Lord of the Rings films, where they were talking about how power was the bane of the world of men. The world of men sought power, right? Tolkien was trying to hit at the mythological uh, record of the nature of good and evil, and the drawing of power. And that whole film, the whole series, is such a good analogy to understand this. Okay, just on a metaphorical level, but there's a real level too that goes beyond metaphor, and we're experiencing it. So this little intro is just for people who are beginners. Okay, I know if you're seasoned, you're probably already bored, but it's important because a lot of people are asking questions right now, and a lot of people are starting to get an intuitive. I mean, they should have had this a long time ago, but whatever. Better late than never. They're getting the intuitive calling that there's something wrong with the world. There's something wrong with what they're being told. Things aren't making sense. And they're sick of all this emotional fluctuation, and they're trying to find the source of it. And they're just trying to figure out, why is everything so chaotic? Why is it so upside down? Why is everything just getting crazy? Like, what's really going on? And all I'm here to do is, first of all, just encourage you to continue to follow that prompting. And you are the one that has to follow that prompting. Nobody else can do it for you, right? All I could do is say, hey, I followed that prompting since about 20 years ago, and here I am. So this is just where I'm at right now. And 20 years from now, who knows where I'm going to be. But I followed that prompting to keep going and investigating past the surface. And what I've found is, I've learned from some of the best. Some of the best. I wouldn't be here without the best people, the best teachers. Many of my people listening have educated me on so many things, right? We're all learning together. We're all exchanging information. And it's wonderful that we even have these platforms available to do that, which is why I'm an advocate for free speech. There's your answer on that one. I'm an advocate for free speech because you need some room to work on things and think out loud. And sometimes you're going to be wrong, and then you can correct that. Like, it's the same in my jiu-jitsu mat. Like, you're going to make a more mistakes than you are going to make something proper, right? But that is the process. And then you can make something that doesn't have those mistakes in it. But you must be allowed to go through that process of error before you can perfect something. So it's the same with thinking. It's the same with theorizing. It's the same with study and research and journalism and speculation, like, valid, sane, rational speculation, that is. And so we need to have the ability to think. And if you're going to have the ability to think, and you're going to be able to think freely, well, remember that speech is an extension of thought. So if they start censoring your speech, you start to, right away, you should start having questions about the people that are trying to do that and advocate for that as their main position. And if there wasn't any free speech in America at the time that, say, someone like Dr. John Coleman came out, and so many others we could go into, Ted Gunderson, Anthony Sutton, so many others. If there wasn't any free speech, we would never hear this information that they discovered in their researches. And these are the guys that, again, they didn't just do some scrolling on Google. These guys went with the microfilm, with magnifying glasses, into archives and libraries, congressional libraries, studied with lawyers, constitutional lawyers, learned from some of the greats as well, and had access to information that you could still get access to today. It's just a lot of people don't have the time or energy to actually do it in that fashion. And we have these amazing tools at our disposal. You don't necessarily have to do it to that degree. So at the very least, when you hear a Dr. John Coleman talking, just realize the level of study and the sacrifice he had to make just to get to where he was at. And he was just one of the pioneers. And I look at all these guys as they started this movement, which is very new, of people going, hold on, there's something going on with the government, something going on with the banking industry, something going on with the media. These guys keep talking. I keep hearing all these clips, and I could sit here and do hours and hours of just clips of guys talking about New World Order, World Order. We got to unify the world, UN, World Order, World Order. And you keep hearing it. And then it's been going on for so long. There you go. What do they mean when they say it? What did George Bush Sr. meant when he said it in the 90s? What did Bill Clinton mean when he said it? What did Gordon Brown, former Prime Minister of England, mean when he said it? What did Tony Blair mean when he said it like 100 times in many interviews? What did H.G. Wells mean when he wrote it in a book called The Open Conspiracy? What did, Woodrow Wilson mean when he was writing in regret about he was formerly working to basically sell America to this New World Order? And he admitted that in public statements. What did the first Prime Minister of England, we're going to talk about England here, Benjamin Disraeli, what did he mean when he was talking about exposing shadowy figures behind the veil that were operating secret societies and nocturnal clubs, that were running the political campaigns, that were paying for it, that were putting their boys in and exposing it? What about generals when they're talking about it, right? What do they mean when they're saying, hey, I've sensed that there's these guys around me that are the very elite, very high level, that have been talking about this world order? And this is like statements from over the last, like you can literally gather this stuff over the last 100 years. You can gather this discussion about this goal for this world order. And so just trying to catch everybody up here before we dive in, that there has been, it's irrefutable that there has been an agenda being cooked up behind the political veil for at least over 100 years now. But I could take you further back, okay? But let's just keep it as easy as possible, okay, of a pill to swallow. That there has been a bona fide, documented, irrefutable, ubiquitously sourced agenda to create something called the world order. And so if we can establish that, we can begin having a serious adult discussion now about something really important, which is, well, who's doing it? Because if I say world order, I might mean something different than a Klaus Schwab, than a King Charles, than a Club of Rome member, than a Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland, who literally uttered those exact words like a week ago in the liberal debate for who was going to be installed as our prime minister without an actual national-wide election. Who has the power to do this? What are they talking about? And who are they? Everybody's like, who are they? And they like to make fun of you. Who are they? The joke's on you. We already know who they are. And we're about to find out even more. And who they are these people who are addicted to power, and they have, on the surface level, this really rose-colored glasses presentation for you about why we need this thing called sustainable development. And they'll only show you the PR advertisement level of, look, we need the sustainable development 17 goals, and we need all of these think tanks and roundtables sponsored by the billionaires of the world to create sustainability. And they do, we're doing sustainability. We need to stabilize the climate. We need to stabilize the environment. We need to stabilize the economy. We need to stabilize the press. We need to stabilize your governments. We need to stabilize every blade of grass in your backyard. We need to stabilize and fine tune and micromanage every single fine detail of every human being's life, right down to the nanometer. We need your genetics mapped out and charted and on our desk so that we can program you for what these guys in Davos are calling the Great Reset and this transhumanist leap. Okay. And again, there's nothing wrong with technology, and not everybody that's advocating for advancing human technology is part of that plan. I think a lot of people just conflate everybody that's doing that, and I understand, but that's some other nuance we could get into another time. But I'm just trying to sketch it out here because they're literally saying and doing in Canadian government right now. In look what America's been going through. Look at what's going on in Europe. They've been working on this for a long time, and so when you see, so when if I zoom back out here and I go, all right, we've established, and we could easily establish that there is this agenda for a world government, a world order. That's what that means, world order. Well, who's going to order it? Well, we need a governance system, right? Okay, world government, not a big stretch. They actually even say that on many occasions. Even Stephen Harper, that everybody loves, who's multiple-time Bilderberg attendee, CFR, he's part of the whole situation as well, was often talking about global governance. That's what he talked about, how we need global governance, right? And sure, you would think, yeah, it's logical. We need global governance. That sounds great. Someone's got to govern human affairs. But then you got to get to that question, who's going to pick in? Who's going to jump into that? Let's even say that the original world order that was being proposed was by people who were very humanitarian and benevolent, and they meant well, and maybe they just needed to restructure some of their thinking on how this could go bad. But anyways, we could say, we could give them the maximum benefit of the doubt. The original architects of this new world order plan, maybe some of them were just like well-meaning hippies that went, yeah, we got to be kumbaya. It's got to be John Lennon's song Come to Life, these Marxists, coming in, and they're swindled by that. And then, over time, the door is open for the psychopaths and the real sharks to come in and go, oh yeah, you're right, you little humans. We do need a world order. You guys are so out of order, and you can't run your own lives. Look at you. You can barely pay the bills and get up on time for work. We'll take care of this shit for you, right? We'll bring you the world order that was promised. But they're the snake oil salesmen that have gone in wearing the wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's the symbol of the Fabian Society, by the way, speaking of getting into British royal roundtable corporations. We'll come and be your shepherds. We're the shepherds of humanity. We're the shining ones. We're the gods. We're the vicars. We're the stand-ins. We're the guys you pray to, and then we send the message to the big guys, right? We're the guys you vote for, and then we go and we take care of all that shit for you. Don't worry. Go back to work. Go back to sleep. Here's some entertainments. Here's a gazillion drugs, whether they're illegal or legal. We've cornered both of those markets. Don't you worry. And we'll make sure that we've got you cradle to grave, taken care of, all good. Don't even worry about questioning anything going on. And this is the kind of messaging that they've been seeding for a long time, these types of people. And I've had my suspicions. So here's the issue. I just want to lay this to rest once and for all today, that there is an agenda for a world order and a world government, which means one ring of power to rule the world. There is that agenda. That is the dream. That is the goal. To me, it's irrefutable. Okay. That is a plan that is in effect and has been in effect for quite some time. And we're in the latter stages of that right now, which is why things are going off the hinges. Another reason things are going off the hinges is because there have been people within those elite networks that have started to resist this. And this is really important. There has been people from within all levels of this system that was set up, this Rhodes system that was set up to infiltrate, penetrate, replace good, patriotic contributors and swap them out for the globalist NPCs that they want in those government and positions of power offices, right? Powerful offices. And that has been happening. That long march to the institutions has been going on for a long time. So when we talk about draining swamps and exposing this deep state and exposing these globalists and all these criminals, that is I just hope everybody understands what level of a tall order that is. Okay. Because this is generational. And this has been something that's been going on for a long time where very few people resisted it. The only people that did were these little individuals here and there. And thank God they existed. And we've got it all documented. But What's happening is now there's some teams starting to be formed to really fight back, at least on certain levels. Are these people that are fighting back going to fight every aspect of this and do a good job? They're going to make mistakes. They're not perfect. They've got their own designs as well, right? So it's going to be a little murky and up and down from time to time. But nonetheless, just as there are these evil, conniving, conspirator type people in the world, there are also people who work within these positions that don't share the same vision or even realize later that they drank the Kool-Aid of that cult and are like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. Is very anti-human. This is very anti-freedom. This is very much going to destroy the fabric of my country. That's probably how a lot of these people that I think are fighting back from within the system experienced it, is that they either had direct experience with watching the level of evil that is really behind this, and they realized, holy smokes, I can't be a part of this. I need to fight back. But what do you do when you're outnumbered, outgunned? You don't have the control knobs at your fingertips, but you're a cog in the machine. What do you do? Well, you can only be a whistleblower. Well, who are you going to whistleblow to? The media? I mean, talk about CIA operations, Mockingbird, the problem with the media, right? So who are you going to go to? Well, you see there's been a battle going on to get this information flushed out to the surface from whistleblowers who have tried, at least the ones that weren't disappeared, arrested, smeared publicly. That's also a massive thing that they do to anybody that opposes them, is they smear the shit out of them to ruin them in the public eye, or they just take you out, you know? So it's so complicated. It's such a tangled web that now when you're just waking up and going, what the hell's going on? What are all these wars going on? What's going on with Trump? Why is everybody like, what's happening? It can take some time to let it all, set in, and then you can actually come out with some sane perspectives on it. But here's what I want to do for you now. Okay. So first of all, I just want to put to rest that that some people out there that just don't think there is some kind of coordinated agenda for a global world government, world order system. There absolutely is. Okay. The debate in this day is whether or not that is something good, or whether or not that is something that is corrupt and profoundly anti-human. And I would go as far as to say evil, because it would be opposing the natural order of life. So if you're at that stage, you're at the right show. And if you're still in speculation, you don't really know, well, just keep digging and hopefully it will be revealed to you. So what I want to do now is play this clip, and I've got some thoughts on it, and it's going to lead us to why we're bringing up something called the Chatham House. Chatham House, 10 Downing Street, used to be called the Royal Institute of International Affairs. So let me just bring in John Coleman to give you some of the basics here, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
The point I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that the federal government, the secret upper-level parallel government that runs the United States, does not want you to know that you have an upper-level parallel government that calls the shots, that dictates what is going to happen to your life and mine. So that's how I found out about the Committee of 300. The next question is, what are their goals? Their goals are a one-world government, latterly called the New World Order. The one-world government began with King George III. At the time that the colonists were brave enough to take him on, King George was already busy formulating a one-world government, and he had lined up at least 50 countries that were willing to come into this future world dictatorship with him. The goals, then, very simply stated, are to make the world over into a one-world, new world order dictatorship, controlled utterly and completely by this Committee of 300.
So just give you a little bit of context. Dr. John Coleman is the one who coined the phrase Committee of 300. Okay. He brought it down to 300 who ran it, and he's got his reasons for it. He goes through it in the book and the research, and this is like coming from, some pretty high level sources. Okay. And he's looking at it as, okay, you've got this committee of 300 that acts like a major steering committee. And then they have all these like umbrella organizations out there. The Umbrella Corporation, remember from Resident Evil? That was made by Constantine Films. You know, remember that shit? Anyways, they have all these like little satellite umbrella organizations that it's just like a top-down system. And many, many researchers for a long time now have gone in and looked at the guts of this thing and have found the actual money trail, the receipts, the connections, the families, the relations, realizing that a lot of the people that run things at the highest level are all related. There's all these cousins, there's all these things. They come from these old ancient lines and ideologies. One thing a lot of people skip over is that a lot of these families and a lot of these contributors, they come from a lot of different family lines and a lot of different cultures even. And this is something that a lot of people don't like to hear because they like to just pick on one or another. But the fact of the matter is, this evil has gotten everywhere. Okay. And it's spread by the ideologies. And there's a recruitment process. And what they do is they get their people into these positions of power that are key in order to take over an area of maybe it could be a small town, all the way up to a country, all the way up to an entire continent, right? This is a system that is used. It's a systems-based approach. It's a gaming system in a way. And it's the way that they game the system to get their guys installed. And it's very, very similar. To keep it really basic, it's very similar to the way the mafia, for example, took over New York, not that long ago in terms of our history. And eventually, I remember when that, or I don't remember, but you look at the old newspaper clippings and you read the conversations of the day around that, where everybody they didn't believe the mafia existed. They thought that was a conspiracy theory until it was absolutely validated. And then we find out, oh my God, it's La Cosa Nostra and this whole Sicilian thing. And like, it's bigger than we know. My God, there's connections to the Vatican. Like it goes on and on. Right. And, we're learning a very similar setup as to how things happen. When you look at in Canada, you can look at a journalist right now. His name is Sam Cooper. You definitely have to go and check out his work and his interviews. He's been looking at one of the elements that has been creeping into Canada through the drug trade and through the human trafficking trade, and the connection to the triads and all these gangs and biker gangs, and the way that system works, and the way Sam Cooper describes this in the context of what's going on with the drug and the fentanyl in Canada is extremely similar in terms of a blueprint to the way Dr. John Coleman has described the bigger mafias, the high tables. You think your local Hells Angels guys control like the whole thing? No, these are runner boys. These local mafias and gangs they just run the drugs and the weapons and the trafficking, the prostitution, and the hookers and all that. And but the real people that are behind that, it just keeps going up and up and up. And when you find out that the guys that are involved in the street crime level, the black market crime level, are also in the what you'd call the white square, the white criminal. I'm talking in terms of like the public, like light and dark. So the dark, that's the underground criminal world. Everybody's like, yeah, there's criminals, but they all think that they're these like biker gang, underground, shady characters, just a bunch of poor people that are trying to fight their way up to the top, and they became involved in crime. Yeah, that's the black market. What about the white market that's run by the massive power brokers in this world, the big mega central banks, the corrupt political classes, the elite roundtable groups? That's your mafia. That's the mafia. Okay. Your local mafia ain't shit compared to the guys Dr. John Coleman is looking at here. And that's important to know. But I just wanted to point out, pattern recognition is going to start to kick in with you as you go on this journey of research. And you're going to start to notice, holy smokes, if I listen to Dr. John Coleman talk about the Club of Rome, Chatham House, the Perlon, the Mont Perlin Society, Order of St. John, all these things in all these groups, the way they operate it sounds exactly like what I'm hearing from some of these journalists that are covering the cartel networks, the drug running, right? And I'm just here to tell you, they're the same people. It's the same system. You just have to look at it from the 40,000-foot view. So just want to clear that up. Continue on, Mr. Dr. John Coleman.
How can they possibly carry out their goals? That's the next question that I'm often asked. They do it by dint and by virtue of their fantastic wealth and the fact that they control thousands of the top banking institutions, the political organizations, insurance companies. In fact, one of the giant insurance companies, a man called me and said, "Do you mean to tell me that they are controlling the Metropolitan of New York?" I said, "The Metropolitan of New York is peanuts." He said, "How can you say that? That's a giant American company." I said, "Well, compared with the Assicurenzi de Generali de Venezia, it's peanuts. That's the biggest insurance company in the world. They control in that organization everything that happens in the world in the insurance field comes out of Venice. That's why Venice is so important, because in Venice we have the black nobility. Now, that has nothing to do with the color of the skin of the people, and I'm going to come back to them as we go along.
Very few researchers are going to get into the Venetian connection, the Parthian connection, the black nobility connection, and they're going to skip right to the Khazars and this little thread, which there's an element, obviously. But just like, remember, you've got to look at everything. And there's a lot of stuff that people like to tunnel vision on, and they forget that, oh my God, there's a whole thing going on all over the bloody place. Okay. So when he's talking about the black Venetians or the black nobility, I'm glad he's pointing it out. That's not talking about the skin color of those people. The reason they're called the black nobility meaning the royals, is because of their black deeds, right? That's how they were viewed. These are the piratical families. These are the people that hijacked thrones. These are your Prince John type people, if you want to use the Robin Hood myth, okay? Which is based on something true as well. But it's still the mythos of it. Think about that. That's a great example. You got Prince John, who in the absence of King Richard, who's out fighting the Crusades, illegitimately claims the throne and then immediately starts acting like a Justin Trudeau and starts tyranting the people. And so then you got King Richard coming back. He's got to take this little guy out of there. Prince John has his little sheriff of Nottingham to run the shtick for him, right? It's just like it's a mythological tale. And the reason it's written into myth is because it's based on reality. And there's been many stories like that. And let me tell you, those types of stories didn't go away with the Middle Ages. There's still that dynamic at play. And so and by the way, if you really want to get into the black nobility, my good friend Michael Tessarian has written an article on this on his website. Let me just pull it up for you. And we've done, I don't know how many shows on this. And it's far deeper. There it is. It's far deeper than you can imagine. And yeah, I'll put the link. Let me toss it in the chat for you here. Bear with me. Toss it in there. If you want to get into it, one of the better articles you're going to read. I also have to warn you, this is also for the newbies out there. There's a lot of absolute shite research in this community. I got to say, there's just a lot of amateur stuff, and you have to expect that. And it's no slight to anybody. Everybody's doing their best, I think. I think there's also some bad actors in the mix. I think there's a lot of disinfo, and I think there's a lot of infiltration into the camp of free journalism and free research, right? Is that obviously that would be a major threat because of how much of an impact that the truth can have and bringing facts to light can have. So I just have to warn everybody, there's a combination of infiltration that's taken place in this community and also shoddy amateur research and jump to conclusions, Mats. So you got to go to the OGs. This is where I've stayed close to the original guys that founded this research field and their research, along with the new updated research that you can actually validate and that fits into the entire timeline. So definitely go to the source material. That's why I bring up John Coleman, because he's one of those OG guys. So anyways, let's let him continue here.
So the goals are a one-world dictatorship of the most brutal kind, and how they carry it out is they have these interface banks, insurance companies, mining conglomerates, every conceivable control in politics, including the Democrat Party of the United States, which is, of course, since 1980 behind closed doors at a secret caucus in Washington, D.C. The Democrat hierarchy took on the goals of the old Socialist Party USA, i.e., based upon the Communist Manifesto of 1848.
Did you get that? So this is going to be hard to discuss with your average left-leaning person out there, okay? The Democratic person, the liberal person, right? Who now you've got to go through the minefield of breaking down how there's a big difference between something called classical liberalism and modern day liberals. And there's a difference between maybe the original Democratic Party, although there is quite a bad history there when it comes to Jim Crow laws, when it comes to the Ku Klux Klan coming out of the Democratic Party, when it comes to the Democratic Party was the one fighting for the continuation of slavery, right? So there is a shoddy history to go along with it that a lot of modern Democrats in America today would never love to admit to you. But that doesn't mean that everybody that was signing up for voting for Democrat knows this and understands the core network of what you could call the deep state, which is on both the left and the right in the political houses. It wouldn't make any sense if it was just one way. These guys would have to capture the board, you know? So you got to really untangle this, but look at what he's talking about. This, when did he do this? Early 2000s, or he did it in the 90s and then it was posted in the 2000s. Pointing out the fact that he's speaking very specifically, and he gets into it in his book, about the actual communiques of how the Democratic Party was simply the target for the Communist International. And if you don't know who the Communist International is, go start digging into that and just learn about that. And the fact that you can get a G. Edward Griffin would be another great one. There's a lot of black and white films of him warning America of exactly what's happening. He brought that Yuri Bezmenov in from Russia to share it as well. But Coleman is just validating something that we've always known. When someone like me or some of these other people out there are talking about the deep state infiltrating America, well, how did they infiltrate? By what mechanism? When did this happen? Right? Is it all the Democrats? Is it all the Republicans? Is it all the is it everywhere? No, it's an infiltration process to take key positions. That's how it works. That's how the mafia would do it. They don't take the whole thing. They take the key positions, right? And so this is what's happening with your FBI in America right now, where, yeah, you got a new director and you got a new attorney general and you got this team who just got in like freaking yesterday, and everybody's freaking out because they're not getting everything they want right now. But you need to understand just how old and how embedded this infiltration is into these institutions. And that defragging that and plucking that out is a painstaking process. Okay. And so he's giving you the history of what we've kind of already, a lot of people picked this up in like 2016, 2017. Maybe some people picked it up as like 2012. Maybe 9/11 was what did it for them. I don't know. But, you know, Coleman was there before all of that. And he was telling you, yeah, here's the actual receipts on specifically how they took the Democratic Party. And the reason that is because the Democratic ideology was open door policy, baby. Let everybody in. Liberal love, love, love. See the best in everybody, right? Help the little guys. Do you know how easy that type of ideology is to infiltrate by a primary psychopath who's just like, oh, all I got to do is sing and dance like them and they'll do everything because they're so emotionally attached to everything. Like, it's so easy to go in with this open door policy and wear the sheep's clothing. The wolves are like, yeah, let's go with, that's the target. Easy target. Same thing here in Canada. Same thing across the entire Western world. Okay. And same thing when you study this through history. It's the same problem. Okay. So he's just giving you the background as to how that totalitarian international, which, yeah, they'll fly communism, fascism, all the isms, but they're deeper than that shit, right? That goes way deeper than just that. This is just the way that they penetrate and get in and then take what? They take the positions of power, authority, and trust. And once they've got that, then they get the next and they capture the next and they capture the next. And before you know it, you wake up and you go, wait a minute, we're not even living in Canada anymore, guys. This is something else now. We're still thinking this is like 1972 in Canada when everything was fine. We don't realize we've been totally captured top to bottom. And here's John Coleman telling you, America, don't be staring down your nose at Canada. You guys got hit even harder. Okay. You've been infiltrated You were, just so you know, as Americans, you were hit the day you were founded by these agents. Day one, 1776. There were organizations set up by this British establishment to get their guys in and start the long march to the institutions as far back as the founding of your country. So, spare me the lecture in Canada. We're just the new kids on the block waking up yesterday. You guys have a history of this, and thank God you're fighting back and at least have that backbone in your entire constitution and that whole ideology of preserving freedom. But, just so everybody knows, this wasn't just an agenda to infiltrate these key positions in Canada or America. This was to take the West out of the equation. And you can get that right from Carol Quigley, right from HG, right from these elite guys, these Fabians, these British royals. You can get all the writings. They were talking openly about how to do this. Don't forget how America was founded. And he was hinting at it here. I hope you're taking notes here. He was talking about how, thank God, Americans fought back against King George. King George, who at that time had taken over power of that British establishment from previous monarchs, right? And America was like, hold on, we don't want to be doing this thing. We want our own sovereignty here. And he's talking about how that started. And the moment that rebellion started, do you think that British establishment that's seeking a world order went, hold on a second, let's just let them go? No, they went, we've got to find a way to capture them back. They looked at it. They looked at America as lost territory. They look at it as lost territory that they had already fought to capture. And now they're like, holy smokes, we got to do this all over again. And we don't have the military might to do it. So we've got to do this through the way of conspiracy, the way of infiltration, espionage, and seizing it by way of capture internally. And that started a long time ago. So when you're coming into modern current events, just know you've got to study the history of what has led to this. Just like if you're studying the Russia-Ukraine conflict, you are in a different universe of knowledge if you're just tuning in yesterday to this conflict and you ignore the thousands of years of history that have ended up as to where we are now with that conflict. Like, there's a lot of history you got to go through to fully understand the history of that conflict from both sides. Okay. But I keep digressing here. I just wanted to point that out, that he's giving you the hints. There's a historical lineage of this, and check out the playbook as to how they do this.
If you have a copy of my book, and I'm not pushing it, but in my book, The Committee of 300, I list every one of their huge, gigantic corporations, how they interface. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is an eye-opener because it gets right down to the nitty-gritty of your everyday life in cities and towns across the United States. So they carry out their goals through existing organizations. And also, of course, they have built up some special organizations of their own. When I first started writing in America, when I came here in 1969, I revealed the existence of an organization called the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which is located at Chatham House in 10 St. James Square in London. I also revealed the existence of the Club of Rome, the Cini Foundation, the Mont Pelerin Society, the Order of St. John, which was known but not known. And I listed all of these secret societies that run the world as executive arms of the Committee of 300. So it controls the world through all of these. The Royal Institute for International Affairs is the executive arm of this committee, which gives instructions to the...
So I got to pause that because I just caught that now. He's saying the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which now goes by Chatham House, is the executive committee. Is that what he said? Let me rewind that. And he's saying it's the executive committee of the Committee of 300. Okay, so they're like the let's hear what he says again.
Through all of these. The Royal Institute for International Affairs is the executive arm of this committee, which gives...
The executive arm of this committee. Okay? That's the role. That's what he's saying. Here you go.
Instructions to the United States government to this very day.
All right. So He's getting into these societies. He's building it up. He's talking about the history. He's talking about how they captured it. And he's talking specifically about this Chatham House, which is previously the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and how it's the executive arm of the Committee of 300, the high table. Think of the Committee of 300 as the high table. Okay, it's up there in Smokyville. We don't know what's up with it. We don't know with the name. We got some indications. He lists who he thinks it is. I think it's bigger now than 300 people. And I think it involves a lot. And I think it's worldwide. It's a globalist order is what it is. They don't believe in countries. They don't believe in that. They have a totally different framework. And they have their corporate setup as to how they get in and do their game of Risk. And they take these different places bit by bit. And that this steering committee is where the marching orders actually come from. Now here's the penny to drop. Now let me just pull up my notes. Oh, actually, sorry. Right before I do the big drop, let me just read a couple of the quotes from Coleman here. Okay. He said, "When I came to the United States in 1969, I found that names like the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, which is the Knights of Malta. If you want to learn about them, I did a whole documentary series on it called Cult of the Medics. The Club of Rome, we also talked about them. The German Marshall Fund, a lot of people don't know about that. The Cini Foundation, and that's CINI Foundation. Something called the Round Table, right? Which I'm wondering if he's talking about Cecil Rhodes there. The Fabians. So there's the Fabian Network. That's the wolf in sheep's clothing as their logo. The Venetian Black Nobility. Go read that article I dropped for you. The Montperlin Society. That would be something coming from France. Hellfire Clubs. You heard about the Hellfire Club? That is a few late nights for sure to go research. And many others, he says, were at best totally unknown here in the United States, or else their true functions were at best poorly understood, if at all. Now, do you think it's like if I ask this is what kind of gets me, and we can move. Thank you so much, Dr. John Coleman. It's so funny when I have these conversations with people who are just hearing this for the first time, and I understand it's a lot to take in and it's impossible to believe the first time you hear it. But the reactions are kind of funny to me. They're like, well, the Club of Rome is, and they just give me what they just asked Siri about or what Wikipedia is going to say about it. And there's no details about what is the function of the Club of Rome. What is the function of the Chatham House and the Royal Institute of International Affairs? What is the function of the Council on Foreign Relations? What is the function of the Hellfire Club by which many of your prime ministers and politicians have been members? What is the function of these orders, right? What is the function of it? How does it really work? What is the Red Cross, anyways? What is its function? There's what it's presented as, but what is it really, right? Do you know? Have you looked at it? Do you have any research in this field whatsoever? You talk to these people, and I just keep asking these questions, and you just get blank stares. They don't even know what I just said. They don't know what the Montperlin Society is. They don't know what the Cini Foundation is. They don't know any of these things. But they're going to have to pretend to know if they're going to get out of this situation of trying to actually listen to somebody that's trying to get them to think for a second. And this is the problem. This information, everybody likes to think that it's just vague and, oh, it's just theories. It's extremely specific. The level of research that I've seen in a lot of the people that are my mentors, the people I look up to, like John Coleman's book and so many others. And yes, there are errors. And yes, there are areas we could disagree on when you see later researchers have picked up that trail and have added way more weight, right? Like this is an unfolding journalistic detective like process that's been going on maybe 50 years total. Okay. In terms of people that have actually done like valid, like I'm talking scholarly level research, not just some guys in their basement. Um, it's it's extremely detailed. It's the most detailed, specific information you're going to find. If you compare that level of research of a Professor Anthony Sutton, a G. Edward Griffin, a John Coleman, we could keep going through the hundreds of names to which we owe a debt of gratitude for good journalism on this. And you compare that to a CNN article or a fact check, pulitofact.org or whatever the fact checkers are saying on Facebook these days. It's like comparing an 11-year-old white belt to a 45-year-old fourth degree black belt. Like it's just, there's not even a comparison when it comes to specificity. So the accusation often thrown the way of conspiracy theorists, especially these types, because trust me, there's a lot of wacky conspiracy theorists which give everybody a bad name. But when we're talking about, like, if you're talking in front of a mainstream journalist or one of these, if I was sitting in front of Mark Carney right now having this debate with him about what he works for, and we're going to get to him, or if I was talking to any of these types of people, right, they're going to be defaulting to that basic level analysis. They're never going to get too specific with you. And then they're going to accuse you of being the one just grandiose theories and making everything general and wide generalizations. But the fact of the matter is, we're not getting wide generalizations, are we? I just played you a 4-minute clip and you already have a bunch of things you're going to have to go and research for yourself. Okay. So take notes of the names. Don't listen to me. You don't have to take my theory on it. Get the source material, construct your own theory, do your own string connecting in your on your in your basement or whatever, right? Because we have to know that, we have to understand why things are happening the way they are. This isn't just some history lesson here. This is, how did it get this bad? Everybody wants to know, and they ask me all the time, well, how did it get this way? Where did we miss it? What's going on? And especially a lot of my fellow Canadians right now who are shocked to find out that they can shut down parliament for 90 days and still have the entire government running around all over Europe, making decisions, giving people our money without any parliamentary oversight whatsoever. Like, they're like, how is this even possible? How could they violate our Charter of Rights and Freedoms so brazenly? How could this level of infiltration by China and Iran and some of these other countries take place? How did that happen, right? How's all of our resources been sold off? Like, everybody's like waking up. What the hell happened? They heard a bang and they're like, what caused the bang, man? All I can tell them is, it's so complicated to get into, but you can get the sources, and thank God we've had the people to document it. It's documented. I can tell you who did it. I can tell you why they did it, right? I mean, it's easy to know why, isn't it? Is it really that hard to understand that this is how the real world operates? Criminal gangs? It makes sense that psychopaths would get ahead of the average moral, well-meaning humanitarian type person. That average well-meaning moral person, they don't even want to believe what I'm saying, let alone research it. That's the problem with the normie mind, is they don't even want to know. So the psychopath goes, brilliant. We've realized that there's a masking defense mechanism in the human mind that we can exploit and remain hidden like predators in the grass. That deer doesn't want to acknowledge that we're there hunting it when it's drinking its water. They don't want to recognize that we exist. At least the deer doesn't have that problem. Humans do. We have a blind spot. We're blinded by our own virtue. We're blinded by the light. It's easy. That's why I did the analysis I did on cults. That's why I created Cult of the Medics and centered around that thesis and that research, because it's just undeniable how many of these freaky cults we could start looking at. And I could just pull out the psychology manuals and the knowledge that the intelligence communities have about your psychology and mass psychology and how to induce mass formation psychosis. Mass formation psychosis is not just always this natural effect because natural events occur and people react with trauma to it. What if you know how to rig the game? What if you know how to induce reactions from the little rats that you put in the maze that you created to get them to funnel into the gates you want them to walk through? What if we're dealing on that level? What do we do with that? Humans do that to animals in labs all the time. And yet we go, oh, that just never, nobody's doing that shit to us. If only, if only it was such a, if we could have that view. We're here to say, no, you need to understand there are predators and they operate by hook and crook. They operate by manipulation. Do you know that, like, the criminal world, we've spoken about this before, but it's worth bringing up again because people go, well, how do they keep this whole big thing? How do they keep all these people in line? Easy. How does the mafia do it? Does organized crime exist on the street level? And then you pass them the microphone and they go, well, yeah, but, and then their excuses for next half hour. So you let them get through that. And they go, okay, so organized crime exists on the street level. Weapons trafficking, organ harvesting, human trafficking, drug trafficking, right? Here's a gazillion examples of elite criminals infiltrating governments, banks, positions of power, right? Here's the history of pharma. Let's just roll that shit out, right? How much money they've all had to, all these companies had to pay for killing and maiming people for decades, right? Like, you're telling me evil doesn't exist. That's what you want me to say to you, this person that's challenging what we're looking at here. You want me to tell you that evil doesn't exist. And if it exists, it's only like little blips here and there that's easily handled by the police. The police are going to wrap up all the baddies. We won World War II and we vanquished evil from the face of the earth forever. We're not in the dark ages anymore. Look, we've got the internet and airplanes. Everything's great. Now, I'm not telling you everything's a conspiracy and everybody's evil. See, I'm on the other side of that as well, and I'm able to look at the difference and see some nuance. But to be on the side saying, let's just blindly trust CBC, CTV, Global News, CNN, MSNBC, like let's just go with what they're saying. Let's just blindly trust the Poynter Institute and all the fact-checking websites that all lead to the same funding sources as the mainstream media. Let's just blindly trust the connections between your government and the mainstream media, who pays them off to make sure that they're making those government politicians look good. Let's just keep following the money. And that's what someone like a Dr. John Coleman did. And that's what his whole book is all about. Well, I followed the money. Here it is. Here's what I found. Doesn't look good. You don't have as many corporations that are all independent running the media that you thought. You've got centralized corporations running it. Now you've got investment firms that are investing at the top level and making sure the chess pieces are moving the way they need them to move. How long do you think this has been going on? Oh, and it just so happens these big investing firms and those big multinational corporations I was telling you about just so happen to sport the symbols of ancient occult groups. Even the words they use. It's like, and so that's when I go, well, now we got to know the symbolism. Now we got to know, why does the Montpellier Society have the symbols that it does? Why does the Club of Rome and the UN with the oak leaves and the whole, what is that? Where does that come from? What does it mean to you? But I don't care about that. What does it mean to them? Why are they using it? Right? Why is it number 10 Downing Street and not number 8? You know, like there's certain things that are done symbolically, because when you're operating on that high level of operation, you've had to learn to exist in a world of code, cipher, secret messages, secret handshakes. Because why? Because you're criminals and you'd be hunted down by the masses if they found out what you were up to. And we've even got statements from people like George Bush Sr. who've said just about the same thing. If they knew what we were really up against or what we were really doing in the government, they would lynch us tomorrow morning. And now you've got all this stuff coming out about US aid and all where your money's going. And you're going to find out a lot more, I think. Okay. So just want to bring his research to bear for you guys once again, that he's telling you, go look in these areas. So what ends up happening in this movement, sadly, is then people start attacking the man and they start going, well, look at that. And they just go, look, you guys are missing the point. I don't care if Barney the dinosaur told you to go investigate the Cini Foundation. Go look at it. I don't care if Barney the dinosaur told you to go look at Chatham House and Royal Institute of International Affairs. We've got a focus problem. You got to focus on what matters when it comes to research. I don't care about who said it. I want to know the facts. And that's what's going to keep you on the straight and narrow with this. So Chatham House, Royal Institute, why are we doing this? Let me show you why. I have it all in my notes here. Let me just pull it up. I got so many notes. Holy smokes. Okay. Yeah, here we are. Okay, let me screen share this, and then I'll drop the link for you. Why, oh why, did we go down this rabbit hole? Why did I just play you and that video and bring this shit up to you? I'm on the Chatham House website, and lo and behold, who's the bloody president of it? Mr. Mark Carney, the guy they called in like their own little Batman to save what? To save Canada from the big bad orange man in America? Or to save the criminal racket that's been going on for a long time in this country. And it starts with the crown and gown, and it starts with looking at the history of this organization and the people involved. Okay. So not only is this guy governor of the Bank of England for a period of time, he just so happens to also be president of the frickin' Chatham House. The one that John Cole and so many other people have talked about, the one we know the history, we've got the names, dates, addresses, and receipts on about sponsoring all kinds of shit. Right? You got the stated goals of these organizations. You've got all the people that are a part of these Chatham House organizations, they're a part of these other ones as well. Is it any coincidence that you have Mark Carney, who's basically sitting as like an executor officer for the Crown Corporation? Of course, he's going to be down with the World Economic Forum. Of course, he's going to be in bed with the King Charles and the King's men, right? Of course, he's going to be, and people have done great podcasts, by the way, breaking down the other elements about Mark Carney. I just wanted to bring this one up because I just saw it and I was like, oh, well, I got to have to do this podcast to tell you who's about to be not elected into the prime minister's office, the prime moon star who works for the governor general, who works for the Crown Corporation of England. He's going to be installed without a vote because they need someone. They're sending in aid to the vassal state of Canada as it's being, to them, attacked by America because Donald Trump said, hey, Canada, you guys are infested with corruption and evil. Goes all the way back up to Europe. You got all these problems. You're in debt. He's giving you a really soft entry, and he's saying, hey, you can come buddy with us. They want to put you in the European Union. Did you know that? Do you know about the fascist roots of the European Union and the Nazis that founded it? Do you know about that history? The average Joe has no freaking clue because they just think, oh, that's just another kumbaya group that's trying to make the world kumbaya. What's the problem? Yeah, you got to read the fine print, bruh. Of course, they're going to tell you it's kumbaya. Of course, the marching orders from the EU and the UN and the Club of Rome and the Montpellier and all these guys, Chatham House. Oh, we're just here to help the world get along. Are you? Why are you continually funding wars when people are actually trying to broker peace deals and you're attacking those people and saying they're fascists and Nazis? I think this is projection. I think these are the fascists and the Nazis. Wearing sheep's clothing. That's all it is. And I've just seen enough to know, and I've seen enough actions, and I've also seen these people lie through their teeth. Look at this guy lying through his teeth already. That's why that Mark Carney meme shit's going around on X, and it's absolutely brilliant. I had to clarify it for a minute, and then someone sent me the actual statement where he was claiming some kind of really over-the-top thing, and this is what started. Mark Carney invented water and all this shit. It's really funny. But I just want to let you guys know who we're dealing with, how this works. And when Coleman was talking about, I'm trying to remember what bit he was talking. He was talking about how this is the executive branch that works on behalf of the big guys. This is who they send in. Send in the clowns. Well, why are they sending Mark Carney into Canada right now? Because the optics for Trudeau, who's just Trudeau was raised in this cult. Okay. He was raised in these families. He's a product of being raised right in the belly of this. Okay. And so he's lost at sea. All right. And his optics are brutal. He can't even get his own party to vote. Even members of his own party want him out. So Why is he all hobnobbing out in Europe right now? Isn't he flying? He went to meet with Macron, his old buddy, roommate or whatever. He was over there. He's over going to Ukraine now. He's all over Europe because what they're going to do is they're going to take Trudeau out of Canada and he's going to go work for either Uncle Schwab, or he's going to have a position with the United Nations, or he's going to be part of one of these British European Union groups as another, like, look what they did to Jacinda Ardern. That's a good way to go. She's another puppet in this mix. Okay. Another agent. When her time came, because of just how disastrous she went next level scorched earth. What was it, in New Zealand? And her optics were just destroyed. So they move her out of the way. And does she have any criminal charges laid? No. Does she have anything go? No. She's just promoted. She gets another role working in these globalist roundtable organizations or these NGOs. They often go run to the NGOs, or they go work with some bank, or they go work with Halliburton, like Dick Cheney or something like that. And these are just all what Coleman was talking about, how they captured like the insurance agencies, the agricultural groups, the oil companies, the telecommunications companies, right? Silicon Valley. Okay. Not everybody is evil, of course. Just the core steering committee groups that make all the big decisions, make all the big moves. That's all you got to capture. You got to capture the central control grid of those different satellite umbrella organizations. So to me, it looks like they are trying to save Canada, even though I have a suspicion it's already done. It's already been done for a while. We've sort of been floating in limbo even before all this took place. But because like the clock was started ticking because of what Trump said and what Trump started to do, now they're like, oh, we better hurry this shit up. Forget about Pierre. He's a long game, right? Let's get Carney in. We need one of the big boss managers. They called corporate. That's what they did. This is the best way. They called corporate and they went, corporate, you got to send someone. All the local yokels we've been trying to put in, it's just not working. It's not working. They keep doing trucker protests and they keep, posting memes. They're destroying the media. We need corporate to come in. And they went, okay, we'll send you the chief clown, Mark Carney. He's going to come and save Canada. And then, so we're going to make it Team Canada. And now Carney has all these fond memories of when he was like 12 years old living in Canada. Okay. Because he was born in Edmonton or something. So that must mean he's a Canadian, right? Even though he's got citizenship to like 6 countries and he lives outside of Canada. He doesn't live in Canada. He lives in like, I think it's England or something. And he's like, just think about it. What's happening? What's happening in Canada is what was supposed to happen in America, but didn't happen. It didn't happen. And now maybe you can understand why all the king's horses and all the king's men can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and why they're so pissed off at what's going on in the US. Why they're so pissed off with the fact that people that they thought they could control are turning on them and starting resistance movements within their own gates. And so they're freaking out. They're panicking. And they're trying to rescue operations right now. You're watching the war take place. We're sitting watching the Battle of 1812 happen right in front. Oh, the cannonball just went off. Did you hear that bang? Oh, I saw some musket fire. That's us on X and on social media. That's me in this podcast going, guys, I just heard a big explosion blow through the gates. Here it is. I'm hoping you're taking some notes on this stuff. What else do I have? Oh, this is just the actual transcript of that speech. What else I got here? Oh, this is fun. So speaking of Chatham House, let me just oh yeah. Arnold Toynbee. Oh. Okay. So let me go and do this. Our brave history at the Chatham House. So lovely. Chatham House has been a source of independent analysis, trusted dialogue, and influential ideas for 100 years. How long did I say you could go look back? I'm just reading this now. 100 years, I said. You could probably go 200. But let's go with what the Chatham House is telling us. Chatham House's founders pioneered the unique and disruptive. What was that? Let's read this again. Can I? Yeah. Chatham House's founders pioneered the unique and disruptive concept of an organization dedicated to the study of international affairs. I didn't realize it was disruptive. Disruptive to what? Their vision altered the course of international politics and helped create the international consensus that followed the world wars. And everybody's like, well, yes, we're going to applaud that, David, because the consensus was that we shouldn't have wars, right? That's what it was. We had the Great War, and then thank goodness for these brilliant Royal Institute of International Affairs coming together to have a unique and disruptive concept introduced that allows the vision to alter the course of history and influence international politics, because I did say these guys are international globalists, right? And created an international consensus, right? And it followed the world wars. So if they write it like that, see, look, we helped create the international consensus that followed the world wars. So the normie brain goes, oh, see, Dave, that's why they built the international consensus, was because it was after the wars and they needed to stop the wars. And so we needed an international consensus to not have wars. Yeah, well, how did that shit work out? There's been more wars started since the founding of the United Nations and these groups since they've been founded than before. So it didn't really go well, did it? It didn't really stop the things they said they were going to stop. All that's really happened, if you really zoom through from 1919 until 2025, all that's really happened is consolidation of power. That's all that's really happened. We haven't seen an end to wars. We haven't seen an end to genocides. We haven't seen an end to a lot of shit: starvation, human trafficking, child sex rings, pedophilia. I mean, during the period of this 100 years where all this brilliant shit was going on, we had Jimmy Savile in America. If you don't want to forget about that, right? Remember Jimmy Savile? He's a great case study. You know why? You know why he's such a great case study, especially if we're going to talk about Epstein files and the real dark underbelly that lies beneath the surface of all this shit. Goes well beyond just some political power broking. It's disruptive, all right. We got to think about this. We had the Jimmy Savile case happen decades, bro. Decades in front of the public eye. The most public life ever in British history. The guy was a rock star upon a rock star upon a rock star. He was a mega star. The mega rock stars were shaking in their knickers when they got to meet Jimmy Savile. That's how popular that guy was. Okay. The Rolling Stones, the Beat, all the top guys were like, oh my God, Jimmy Savile. He's the shit. Hanging out with the royal family, buddy with the current King Charles, Mr. Terra Carta, Mr. Founder of Davos World Economic Forum with Uncle Schwab, who's the king now of Canada, apparently. And he's sending in his boy Carney to deal with the situation from corporate. Yeah. And what did it turn out with Jimmy Savile? What turned out of that? The whole public adored him. Never walked in a pub paying for one drink he ever had. Carried on the laurels of the people all the time. Under everybody's noses. Well, the public's noses. If you're going to try to convince me that the royal establishment and these motherfuckers and the media and the people at the top didn't know the truth about Jimmy Savile, I've got some news for you. Okay. But the public and the lower level didn't know that the guy just so happened to not just be a guy who was caught a couple times with a few iffy aged, they're right on the cusp of that young age. No. It was like some of the brutal history of crimes against children. Okay. And I'm just bringing this up to say There's what you think you know, and then there's reality. And those things should never be conflated. Okay. So the jump to conclusions, Matt, you got to check that because the whole British public and the entire world jumped to the conclusion that Jimmy Savile was the next Elvis Presley. And it turns out, no, he was one of the most evil human beings to ever walk the face of the earth. So we've got to look beyond the surface here. And this gets me to, all right, let's hold this thought. So I was also looking at the limited phase 1 Epstein file release that I know everybody's super pissed off about, and I totally understand, and I can't wait for the whole thing to drop. All I'm going to stay on that is give it a minute, have some patience. There's a battle going on behind the scenes. It's not as easy as if they're going to defend it. The people that are trying to hold on to that, they're going to be defending that thing to this level. All right. You have to know how many bombshells are in there that implicate the entire world order. Let me just tell you that it's huge. It also leads to other things that we already know exist that need to come out. So we're waiting on that. I don't know any more than that, but we do have some information. So don't just go, oh, there's nothing to see here. I already know everything with the Epstein. It's impossible because I haven't even gone through it all yet. So you haven't gone through it all yet. There's a lot of shit. There's a lot of new things in there. Okay. And also, let's just take the information we can get and work with it. Like that's what you need to do right now. You need to be proactive with the information you do have. So we can either sit here and cry and whine about the fact that we don't have the information we were expecting and then just walk away from a gold mine, or we can actually do some due diligence and do what Dr. John Coleman would do, which is to comb through every piece of information we were just given with a fine-tooth comb to see if there's anything new connections, new revelations. Okay. And so I'm just going to share with you what I did the other day. And I'm hoping I can find my actual post on this because I had it all right there. It's all organized nicely. So just bear with me. I've been posting a lot. Oh, yeah. I did a funny one with Mark Carney. I made Grok make me an image of Mark Carney being the first one to invent the first Doom video game in 1993. That was my contribution to the meme. Hold on, let me get through here. I had a rather interesting debate with Grok yesterday that I'll tell you about. I think I actually changed Grok's mind on something. Here's all the Canadian Team Canada people saying they're Team Ukraine right now, which is really weird. But anyways, let me find it. It's here somewhere. Yeah, I just started going through the lists. And okay, here we go. Here we go. I think I'll just screen share for you guys so you can follow along. It's all in context to what we're talking about. Okay. We just brought up Epstein because we're talking British establishment. I think it's one big club and you ain't in it. And let me just show you. I spent 25 minutes in the Epstein files yesterday, what was released. And I just said, okay, I'm just going to start at A. Okay. I'm going to start at A. So here's A. Let me make this bigger. Okay. And I was like, oh, Bamford. So this is the list. This is, I did post the link. But anyways, hopefully everybody has the link of the official link you can get on the government website of where to get the actual list. So it is all sourced. All right. But I just went through the list. This is the names. Okay. These are part of the client list. Okay. Now we don't know whose clients right now. This is why we're missing information. This is why it's phase 1. We don't know who's just on the plane because there's people that probably were on the plane. There are people that knew Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell that might not have been involved with all the crazy stuff. Okay. Because you got to remember, these people are chameleons and they have to wear the sheep's clothing. So they're going to have to rub, they need to get some good street cred. So that's what Epstein was good at. A lot of people were swindled by Epstein. Okay. I think he was a honeypot blackmailer. I think that was what that was about. This is part of this big committee of 300 system, is that if you want to control the chessboard, you can't just pay everybody off. It's not good enough. Okay. You can't just pay everybody off. that gets old because someone could be a higher bidder and they could pay them more. And then now you have traitors in your midst. So you can't run your criminal enterprise and your infiltration process simply by paying people off. Okay, so that's number one. You also can't just threaten, okay, well, like the mafia, if you rat on me, I'm going to cap you. Like that only goes so far also, because then they're going to get their security teams and be like, yeah, try me, man. All right. The most powerful way to hold together a criminal organization, especially a transnational criminal organization, is by way of blackmail. That is the biggest currency that I've spoken to detectives, police officers, people that have been in this game a long time, researchers, journalists. They'll tell you the same thing. I've even spoken to victims of human trafficking. The thing is that it's blackmail that's the glue that holds this whole evil empire together. Okay. So think about that. So we just have we're getting little pieces here, but just kind of coloring in the edges for you. All right. So I go to A and I'm like, who's this Sir Anthony Bamford? Who's Anthony Bamford? And who's Miss Lady C? They are on the Epstein list. So who are these people? And I just start looking, and here we go. If you haven't heard of these people, Lord and Lady Bamford, who are linked to the billionaire JCB owning family linked to Boris Johnson. They are linked to Boris Johnson. Interesting. And apparently major donors to a whole host of British parliamentarians and politicians. And this is just a quick little Wikipedia entry here. Born in 1945, he's a British businessman. Anthony Paul Bamford, who's known as Baron Bamford. So he's a baron. He's got lands and titles. He's a British billionaire businessman who is the chairman of Wikipedia. Ooh, interesting. The chairman of Wikipedia on the Epstein list. Interesting. Let's continue. And so when I go and check out the Wikipedia entry, it says this. And of course, this is something that would perk my attention. So he was born in October 1945. He's a British billionaire businessman, chairman of J.C. Bamford Excavators Limited. That's JCB. He succeeded his father, Joseph Cyril Bamford, as chairman, and he was knighted in 1990. He was knighted. You got to be a select few to be knighted. And of course, if you want to get into the whole knighting thing, that's once again covered in the Cult of the Medics documentary series. So I just went, oh, interesting. The values are really high. These guys are super wealthy. What else do we got? I found some interesting things in his personal life. Now, here we go. This is interesting. Bamford, it says in his personal life, this is public. This is Wikipedia. We're talking as mainstream as you can get. Bamford is close to King Charles III, as well as former prime ministers Tony Blair, David Cameron, and Boris Johnson. He provided Daylesford House for Johnson's wedding party in July of 2022, along with a whole shitload of money. Okay. With his wife, Bamford, his wife is the one referenced as Lady C on the Epstein list. His wife was invited to ride in the King's procession at Royal Ascot in 2023. So these guys aren't just like, oh, we've played golf together a couple times. We've had a few champagnes a couple times at a New Year's party. They're in the King's procession. They're buddies with the top political brass. They're multi-billionaires, and they're friends with Tony Blair, David Cameron, all these very modern politicians, but he's also really close to the king. And King Charles is also a member of the family that also has someone named Prince Andrew in it that is a known associate of Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. Now, yes, we don't have right now all of the ins and outs and the receipts on every transaction and everything that everybody wants. We're not quite there yet. But what I'm trying to show you here is I'm just going, again, I'm just in the surface level of A and the first guy that shows up. And we're already in the weeds with just the connections and who the fact that they are powerful people. Okay. Now you could argue that some of these powerful people are simply just trying to become more powerful and wealthy, which isn't a crime. It's not illegal. It doesn't mean they're automatically the spawn of Satan or part of like the Illuminati. They just are greedy and they want to have as much money and power as they can possibly squeeze out in a lifetime. Not illegal. But so is it that? Is it just that? Or is it where there's smoke, there might be some fire? And so that's kind of what I'm thinking here. Now, it's just interesting that these guys all kind of hang out, hobnob, and also financially support each other. Okay. Just don't forget about the nightmarish Boris Johnson reign in Britain that has now been followed up by Keir Starmer, who's even worse. Okay. I'd love to look at what a Doge operation would do on those guys. But here we're going. Boris Johnson has reportedly been living in a luxury London property around the corner from the Harrods that is owned by the wife of a wealthy conservative donor, Lord Bamford. Since being forced to stand down as Prime Minister last September, Johnson has reportedly been staying in a 20 million euro Knightsbridge property, Knightsbridge, belonging to Carol Bamford, the wife of Anthony Bamford. So there's your Lady C. Lady Carol is who she is, right? From the Independent. So they're just this is a mainstream media article, and they're just kind of going, look, he's just got all this money. They just focus on the money because they know the average person is just like, what? He's making money. He's got billionaire friends. What an asshole. Like that's the end of their reporting. But we can go, it is interesting actually that they're staying at luxury properties, these politicians of these billionaires who are knighted, who are sitting up there with the royal class, right? Who are most likely members of these nocturnal hellfire clubs as well. Okay. And if we know that the whole criminal, if this system overlooked Jimmy Savile for decades, what if I told you that we are on strong ground to speculate wildly that maybe there's more than one Jimmy Savile? That Jimmy Savile was just the one who was caught eventually? And what about the ones who haven't been caught? How big does that network go? How big is the club that we ain't in? Right? That's my question. And there hasn't really been any deeper penetration into that. Even Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew, what happened to that guy? Is the guy sitting in jail right now? Is he being questioned? What's going on with him? Of course, he's got this special protection where it doesn't really go anywhere. And trying to remember the name of the detective. Somebody, a good friend of mine, had pointed me in the direction of who's like an expert on this British side of the cult, right? With Jimmy Savile and the Royals and everything. I'll have to go dig into my notes, but because there's so much is flooding my mind as I go through this. But I just thought, okay, we're starting to get a little closer. We're getting some interesting connections. And again, we're just at the letter A. Okay. And then let's just go a little deeper. I noticed something else, that the picture that we were looking at earlier, and let me just show you so you know what I'm talking about. This picture here, okay, was the picture in this article, and I have it all linked in my thread there. I zoomed into the bottom left-hand corner, and it just has a little image credit. You know, the little image credit details. Luke Walker getting images for Starlight Children's Foundation. So this means the photographer was taking a photo of these people at this Starlight Children's Foundation gala dinner or whatever, where all these millionaires and billionaires go to hobnob and pretend that they give a shit about poor people. And I just thought, oh, interesting. Oh, Starlight Charities. Well, what do we know about charities, guys? What do we know about charities? Do we know anything? Have we learned anything? US aid. Okay. US aid is supposed to be sort of like a charity where the US taxpayer has money allocated towards giving money to other countries who need it. So it's a charity, right? It's kind of like a charity. And what are we finding out about US aid right now? Is it operating on the up and up? Are all these charitable causes like really gallant and noble efforts to improve humanity's condition? Or are they sponsoring Sesame Street in Afghanistan? Are they sponsoring transgender surgeries in Beirut or wherever? You know what I mean? Like, is it, and is that even where the money's going? Like, I feel like in a way there's a bit of a mockery too that happens with these types of people, these psychopaths, these Satanist types who hate reality, who hate humanity, who hate the good. Like, these are pirates, all right? And there's sort of like this little let's get some jabs in there on the human race. And I don't know, there's something behind this where I think a lot of that, where that money's going, is just there to trigger you. In reality, a lot of that money's flooding into pockets and enterprises that are far deeper than just funding some woke shit in Iran or Nigeria or whatever they're trying to do, right? There is that. I'm sure there's a lot of the money that goes to some of these things, but there's part of me that goes, the type of people we're dealing with at the high table level, they're just using these things as fronts. Like the way, for example, in when I used to run my martial arts academy in, I'll just say, Toronto area, um, close to my location, there was I have to be careful. Close to my location, there was a business that was operating as a front for possibly some criminal activities. If you catch my drift, if you've ever lived in Woodbridge and you know what I'm talking about, all right? And what was really funny about that was I would hear some really weird shit daily going on next door, like people getting beaten the shit out of and weird vans pulling in and out and stuff going at 2 a.m. and just weird shit. Okay. So I went, okay, there's a bit of a racket going on. And I noticed that the sign on the front of the building and even the description of the business would change every 3 to 6 months, even though it was the same people. And I'd be like, hey, buddy. He's like, hey, what's going on? Like, new business? Yeah, we just decided to switch ventures. Hey, good for you. I got no questions, right? And so one month or two, it's a tobacco shop. Then it's golf clubs. Then it's this and that, and they have all these different businesses, and you find out it's the same people running it. It's the same 2 a.m. meetings. It's the same types of people coming in and out. And you go, all right. So what they're doing is they're operating a criminal racket, and they're just changing the business front and the shop front and the signs and even the products to avoid detection by the authorities. It's a pretty basic kind of organized criminal thing to do. Well, again, this is scalable. All right. This playbook is scalable. And you go, okay, well, how would elite criminal mafias work that are international in scope and funded to the tune of billions, if not trillions of dollars? How would that operate? Well, it would very similar. They would use blackmail. They would have low-level guys who just have their own little missions. It's all compartmentalized, like the military and the mafia. They know what their job is. That's it. They don't ask any questions. The further away you get up to the top, those guys know more. And if there's any heat that comes their way, what do? They just change the face. They just reframe it, reface it. It's kind of like what's going right now with our cabinet shuffle in Canada right now. You just reface it. Same criminal organization, send in a new face, give it a new airbrush, give it some new neon lights, and we'll be undetected. It's just the way criminals operate. USAID, charities, we're just starting to learn. Okay. Just wait till we learn about the Pharma Connection, the Red Cross, the Salvation Armies, these types of things, the children's hospitals. Okay. I've interviewed some people that have told me things that I am not to share publicly. And I've shared what I can, but because there's still people actively involved. Like you got to understand, like when you're dealing with these organizations and trying to get out there as a journalist, like, lives are at risk when you say shit, right? So there's another reason information is being withheld when it comes to Epstein files, other than, oh, they're just all in on it and they're trying to cover it up. Like, clearly these people have had no experience in real detective work, okay, about how these criminal organizations work, okay? But I'm just saying that because we got to look at some charities. So I pulled up that image. I'm like, what's this Starlight Children? Interesting name, by the way, Starlight. When you understand the symbolic obsession that some of these people have. And so I went, okay, this guy was taking a photo of the Bamfords at the Starlight Children's Foundation. And so I'm like, okay, what's the Starlight Children Foundation? Oh, it seems pretty cool, delivering happiness to seriously ill kids and their families. We have a mission. We've got founders. We've got financiers. You can get involved. The impact about us, blah, blah, blah. They've got, what's this? Oh, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oh, yeah, of course. Well, some companies go with that just because, they think that that's going to be what the public wants, even though maybe they haven't realized the, you go woke, you go broke kind of model that Hollywood is suffering from right now. But yeah, okay, we can give them the benefit of the doubt, Maybe they're just, and probably a lot of good people working in the foundation. I don't know. It's somebody else. It wasn't the Bamfords that like started the organization. But the thing is these kind of people, they go to their buddies things. They go to their friend. They're invited to these things. You got to come to my charity thing. Oh yeah, I'll come. I'll give you some funding. We'll get some pictures. It's going to look good. There's connections, right? And you go, okay, what's up with these connections? Well, it's just, I didn't go through every name on the board list, and this is just the board. They're a public 501c3 company, right? They're committed to best practice levels of governance, transparency, accountability, financial management, no doubt. Okay. Like I said, probably a lot of good people there. The CEO is responsible for managing overall operations. Okay. Sounds about right. Yeah. What's Steven Spielberg doing on that shit? Amblin Entertainment. Hey, Hollywood elites, producers, you know, I'm trying to give it all. They like to be a part of charitable functions. They like to use their wealth and power to do good in the world, right? It's just that we've come to learn some things about people like Spielberg in this research community that aren't too savory. It's kind of like what's going on with people like Tom Hanks. And if you remember Isaac Cappy, what he said openly about Spielberg, and then soon met his demise, and he named a bunch of people, it makes you wonder. And you go, okay, I don't have any smoking guns. There's no receipts. I'm not laying any kind of official accusations. I got nothing here. This is what we have to go off of. Do you see the problem, right? So we can start creating a tapestry here, but we don't have all the final receipts yet. So that's all I did. I just did that. Took me 23 minutes to do that little thread of just interesting. And in the end, all I can really come back with is just go, interesting. Now, my spidey senses are definitely tingling when it comes to Mr. Bamford and these types of groups and the Starlight Children's. The reason is because what we're discovering right now with these investigations that are just looking right now into the spending of where are our government departments in America. I wish we could start doing this shit in Canada, but hey, America is the template right now. We're going to go in and investigate where all this money's been going. And lo and behold, we're finding out there's billions of dollars in really bad spending. And now we're starting to find some criminal activity and some fraud going on. Okay. And we're just going to keep pulling that layer. And I think this is starting at this level so that the public can slowly let this seep in. And I know people that have been looking at this for 10 years are like, no, man, I've just seen enough. I don't have the time for everybody to wake up. I don't have the time for this shit. I'm sorry you don't have the time. Because here's the issue. The way I see it, okay, from my decades doing this, comparing notes, just you gain a sense of things. You gain a sense and an intuitive sense, and you don't always know if even that is correct or not, but we're all doing the best we can, okay? We're all staring at shadows on the wall half the time. So you just got to trust your gut, and you got to go with the information you have. And I'm not asking for anybody to make conclusions on this until we get the actual sauce, all right? But I think if we start looking into charities, I think if we start looking into some of these big charities and some of these missions to Haiti and stuff like that, and Africa, and you were looking at US aid, and we're looking at some of these, look at Oprah and the shit she was involved with, John of God connection. Like we just keep finding in these otherwise seemingly benign, whatever, celebrities and charity groups, it seems okay. And then there's just this like little question mark people that are involved in the background. And then the more you dive in, you go, wait a minute. John of God was actually getting women to birth children so that he could do organ harvesting and make money off it was really, really bad. Okay. And then you just keep getting these little hints, and we've got hints, excuse me, about who's on this Epstein list. We know some of the flight logs. Okay. We also know who's squirming right now, who's freaking out right now about all this shit happening. And I think that if we start peering behind the veil of what I'm calling the temples of light, and I'm just using that as like a metaphorical statement to talk about that principle of being blinded by the light and the wolf in sheep's clothing concept. The temples of light are just my metaphorical term for all of your nice, happy-go-lucky Shriners and churches and Knights of Malta who are just there to help make everybody better and not sick anymore. And they're just these philanthropists, and like George Soros Foundation is there helping crippled children in Nigeria, and the Red Cross does all these missions, uh, to go and help the starving, the sick, and the needy in the war-torn countries. And even when you go on the Club of Rome, not the Club of Rome, sorry, the Knights of Malta website, they're just philanthropist charitable organizations that are there to make sure that when a hurricane goes off, everybody's got enough water and food and medical supplies. And so there's nothing to see here, people, right? The temples of light, the things we trust, right? What happens when we look behind the veil of that? What happens when we get a Doge-like system? I don't care if you like Elon Musk or the way he's doing it or not, but I love the concept, okay, of getting an investigative, independent, public, transparent audit system, forensic audit system to go in, use weaponized autism, and expose all of the money trails, that the money that we've all been donating to the World Health Funds and the World Health Organization and the Red Cross and all these things and these children's starlights, this and that. I don't know. I don't want to I'm just, by the way, just as a disclaimer, I don't know if there's any shady shit going on at that specific charity. I just thought it was interesting and I went, okay. And I'm just trying to see here, who are these people all hanging around? And because of the fact that we don't have all the phases of these lists yet, and we don't have all the investigations in the data just yet, we are in a position where we can only be suspicious until we know for sure. But what happens if I spend more than 23 minutes on that? What if you guys help me out? And what if we go A to Z with what we've got? And we go into the nanometer and do our own Doge investigation and do the best that we can with the tools that we have at our disposal, which John Coleman never had at his disposal. He had to do the hard grunt work with the heavy lifting to get his research. We can use AI. We can use sophisticated search engine processes. We can use investigative techniques to procure information that was previously classified at a rate and in a pace that has never been seen before in history. Our generation has access to the greatest amount of tools to expose evil happening in our midst. And all I'm saying is we can spend our time arguing about pointless bullshit. We can spend our time blackpilling each other all day long so that we're so demoralized we don't do jack shit. We can sit around on our hands waiting for something to happen, or we can take what we've got and turn lemons into lemonade. And we can start the process while we wait for the next phases to happen. And we keep the pressure on Kash Patel. We keep the pressure on Pam Bondi. We keep the pressure on Trump and his team, who's the only cabinet in the world even touching any of this shit, which is why I have a feeling all the guns are pointed at him right now. I don't know. Maybe I'm just jumping to conclusions. But there's a reason why everybody's coming out. What's going on in Ukraine? We've got General Flynn. We've got other people that have stated publicly. We've got independent reports. You got people like Clandestine there, who's been doing like years of deep research into the dark underbelly going on in Ukraine that nobody wants to talk about when it comes to human trafficking, when it comes to organ harvesting, when it comes to organized crime syndicates, when it comes to slush fund activity, when it comes to corruption and being a hub for a lot of dark, shady things, the Azov battalions, the Nazi connection, the history that goes back, right? Like there's a whole dark side that the average person out there that's just flying the Ukraine flag right now is not really taking into full context. And again, I hope that this, I'm here, I want that war to just end, like just stop killing people. Like I don't want to get into, I just want this thing to end, right? But why is every single European politician and all of the UN, the EU, the George Soros guys, the Klaus Schwab people, everybody is on one side. And then you have this little breakaway administration in America with a bunch of patriots scattered around the West that are going, wait a minute, guys, the whole West is like drinking Kool-Aid right now. There's something deep and dark that we need to expose here. And we don't have all the answers, but my God, we have enough to know there's something really bad going on and we should investigate it. And I think it's all connected. Why wouldn't it be? If an organized criminal racket has been going on for at least 100 years in terms of penetrating cabinets, trying to take over countries and steer them away and not doing a legal election process, they're installing politicians, they're selecting them, they're not electing them, they're putting them on boards, they're installing them at the head of corporations, right? They controlled the media. They were censoring doctors during the pandemic that have been turned out to be right. Like we've got enough evidence that something big is happening and we're just trying to get in there and go, whoa, what's really happening? How does it work? Well, my prediction is that we're going to find out a couple things as this drops. And I'm just going off of the information I've been given over the years. Okay. And many of you will probably agree with this. This isn't outlandish for me to say. We're going to find out that the thing that holds this all together, this criminal enterprise, okay, is blackmail. That's going to connect us to Epstein. That's why the Epstein Ghislaine Maxwell case, which only came into the public consciousness during the first Trump administration, okay, there were a few people that were talking about Epstein before, but only from like the same place I'm at with just some suspicion. We didn't have the smoking guns yet. There's a connection there because I think that's what that operation is. That Epstein operation is. That's the honeypot to get the dirt on people so that you have the ultimate leverage, which is why they will never betray you. Because if they betray you, you spill the beans and you just isolate them, destroy their career. You can also take them out, but it's more powerful to just discredit them in the public mind, which means the public mind is the battlefield. The public mind that Bernays talked about, those that pull the wires of the public mind are the real power brokers, not your politicians, Edward Bernays. That is really the prize. Who can capture that and keep it distracted the most? And if that public mind starts to awaken and go, hold on a second, you guys are ripping me off? You're sending all my money overseas? I'm broke and unhappy and can't even buy milk now. And suddenly I'm supposed to be sponsoring transgender surgeries in Chile or something? Like, what's going on? And then they go, wait a minute, you lied to me about this, you lied to me about that. Oh my God, what's with all these missing children? Holy shit, the Vancouver ports are being used to smuggle in levels of fentanyl that would kill every Canadian 10 times over. The government's just letting it go. The RCMP are doing nothing. What's happening with that? We've got this human trafficking situation. It's way worse than we thought. Holy smokes. How could that be happening in a world with all this surveillance technology and satellites? And we just did track and trace programs to find out who had COVID, but we can't find where all these missing children are going. For decades, they've been going missing. We've got former testimony from FBI agents that have come out for a long time saying, yeah, it's pretty bad. Government officials are involved. Boys Town. Yeah, right? Many such cases, many such instances. We're starting to wake up. So I want to encourage everybody. We have it all. We have a lot. We don't have it. Well, maybe we don't have it all yet, but we've got a lot. Okay. We've got a lot to go. We've had a lot for a long time. Those of us who've been really doing this hard work in the alternative research community. And we're getting more by the day. How could you be upset about that? How could you be blackpilled about that right now? How could one thing doesn't go our way and suddenly, we're just like walking away from the game? Get back in the fight. Get back on the pitch. This is no time to be down. Like, there's so many wins that have been happening in the last 30 days in terms of exposing the layers that people like John Coleman and all these guys I've talked about. myself, all these people that have been laboring for so long to try to warn people about. We can't drop the ball. Our generation, we can't drop the ball now. So, like, we need the right mindset here, which is we got to be proactive, not reactive. If you're reactive, you're going to lose. I tell this to my students when I'm talking about jujitsu. I was just talking to my kids' class today. I'm like, if you're just reacting to what your opponent's doing and you're not proactively trying to change your situation, you're going to get destroyed. You must get ahead. And the way to get ahead is to be proactive when you're in the middle of a fight. You don't take 2 steps back. Your goal is to take 3 steps forward. And then if you're backed up, you won't go more than 2 steps. You got to go. And it's just like forward a bit, back a bit. Now, if you're going forward 2 steps and then back 5 steps, you're going to lose. You're on the losing track. And that's where we're kind of at in terms of, I think, this community right now is we're just getting the blows that are coming our way of being disappointed and all these things are just like little taps. And we're just melting because we don't have our emotional content reined in. We don't have we're not thinking logically. So I'm just here to recommend stay the course, think logically, believe whatever you want about the bigger apparatus that's at foot that's allowing this truth to come to the surface. There's something happening that shouldn't be happening that is cutting off this agenda at the knees and exposing this evil. The fact that we're having this conversation, I wake up every day and thank my lucky stars that it's happening. I don't wake up every day and go, oh my God, I wish there was more. I do wish there was more, but wishing doesn't matter. You wish all you want. You can cry all you want. The universe, nature doesn't give a shit about feelings. It cares about action and non-action. That's all that matters. So I think we should dive deeper into the information we have. I've just given you some quick introductory loose connections here. There's much more to go through, but it would take me 10 hours to go through it with you all. And I'll do it to the best that I can. But like, look at these connections that we can now make and start going, wait, we already have an archive of documented information and evidence to back these ideas and theories and conclusions. And now these events are happening in real time right in front of our faces. And so it's not a time to be tucking tail and running and concluding that it's hopeless. It's only hopeless if you stop fighting. How about that? That's the new marker. You're only allowed on this show and on this platform and in my chat rooms and on my social media page. If you're going to come to my Twitter page and comment on my posts and I start seeing black-pilled shit on there, here's my new rule. The only time you're allowed on my page, okay, I'm not trying to be a censor. I'm just like trying to keep my house clean so I don't have to keep looking at all this bullshit all the time, okay? It'd be like if you walked in my dojo wearing muddy boots. No, you don't have the freedom to do that shit if I, the owner of the dojo, tell you to get the hell out with your muddy boots, okay? So if you're bringing your muddy boots onto my comment threads with a bunch of hopeless black-pilled nonsense, here's the new rule. The only time you're allowed to have the black pill under my watch is when you quit. Not when you see other people not doing what you think they should do, or these events happening that are totally out of all of our control, where there's factors involved that none of us can predict or understand. None of us are sitting at the high table. None of us have the total view. We're all just getting little shards and clinging on to them for dear life and then fighting over the scraps. Meanwhile, the people I'm talking about, the world order people, they're fucking 200 years ahead of you. So how about this? I won't give my rule to you. You do what you want. Okay. I don't want to become like that person. Here's the rule for me. If I come on my show and I'm starting to tell you I'm black-pilled, it's because I quit fighting. That's when I'm black-pilled. Not when other people quit fighting. I could give a shit what other people are doing. I hope they contribute, but if not, if you're the last man standing or the last woman standing, you don't get to be black-pilled. If you can still hold your shield and you can still swing your sword, there's no black pill time. Okay. You either come home with your shield or you come home on your shield, because we're at that level of a precipice right now as a civilization, as humanity, as a species. Are we going to live free? Are we going to move on and prosper? Are human beings going to thrive on this planet and actually achieve the human dream here? Right? Or are we going to get turned into a global gulag, global NPC control grid scenario where human freedom and human thriving ceases to exist? And we've seen that experiment run multiple times in history, by the way. And we know how it all works out. So we either look into the darkness and go, oh my God, it's so dark, it's hopeless, I'm just quitting up and everybody's evil and there's nothing good happening. Or maybe add your own mind into that equation and go, well, maybe everybody else is corrupt. Maybe it is hope. Maybe on their front, it's hopeless. Maybe everybody's, but are you? That's the last question to ask. Are you hopeless? Are you bad? Are you evil? Are you part of it? Are you quitting? If you're quitting, if you're hopeless, if you're contributing to the evil, then you can take the black pill, not before. Because if there's one soldier left, that enemy hasn't vanquished the enemy yet, or hasn't vanquished their opponent yet. That's the warrior path. That's the mindset. That's the samurai code. I don't care if I'm the last man standing. If my sword is still swinging through the air, the enemy hasn't wiped us out yet. So then that actually means there is no time for black pills if you have that mentality. Because the only way, this is your mindset in this kind of a game, the only way you're getting taken out of this game is not through depression, hopelessness, and anxiety and projecting all of your fears onto the world. That's not the way out. That's the way out for the Potters, not the Spartans. If you want to be the Spartan, your mentality is, I'm coming home with my shield or on it. And there is no black pills. It's liberty or death. End of story. I don't care if I'm the last person fighting for it. That's the mindset you need to have if you're going to be victorious. And the beautiful thing about that, my friends, I've seen this in many areas of my life. When you have that level of fearlessness and determination and valor, it's interesting how you gain protective quality, you gain protection, you gain more people coming to your back. Your force grows. So thought I'd throw a few gems your way. Take those notes on those agencies. I'm going to list them again for you. Let me pull them up here that John Coleman was asking us all to go research. And I just think there's no time like the present right now, right? Hold on, I just got to find that link again. So what was it? Cini Foundation, the Montpellier Society. Oh my God, where the hell is that quote? Damn it, I had it. Cini Foundation, Montpellier. Well, forget it. Chatham House, Royal Institute of International Affairs. How does that figure into the greater apparatus of that British system? Now that, again, not everything is necessarily evil and backwards there either. It's just that we know about how this works with the capturing. It's the key positions, right? So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either. Don't just take your Uzi and spray the whole room just because there's 5 guys in there that are evil. You take out all 30 people in the room, you killed mostly innocent people, right? So just watch where you're expending your ammunition all over the place too, right? Remember that. It's very nuanced, very specific. And we go and we dig, we look in these foundations, we get into the bellies, and we do our own Doge to the best that we can. Who Elon Musk can go get a bunch of autistic guys and get them in there and start getting them analyzing document. Why can't we do that shit right now? In fact, here's the good news, my friends. That's already been underway for the past 8 years. We've just been working off of, maybe second level information, not top level, but we've been doing the best we can with it. Let's keep it going. And as more of that top tier information drips down our way, just keep picking it up and keep going. Keep sending the baton up the ranks and carry this shit over the finish line, because When you're fighting evil, you're fighting with both hands tied behind your back. When you're fighting evil, you're fighting at a disadvantage. It had to be like that. But here you stand. We're only going to get stronger, and we can work better together. And we can work better with a positive, proactive mindset. Can't we? So if they're sending in corporate to Canada to save Canada, meaning not the Canadian people, not the Canadian dream that we all thought we had, not the freedom and the maple syrup and all the beautiful things of Canada and the beaver tails and the campfires. We have beautiful campgrounds, by the way. Far better than the United States. I'm sorry. It's just true. I've spoken to a lot of American friends of mine. When they come camping up here, they're like, holy shit, you guys go to the nines with your campgrounds. Anyways, if they're sending corporate, they're desperate. We'd sent a message with that convoy. We sent a message with this pushback against these world order people that have come in and infiltrated our governments and are allowing criminality to thrive in our underbelly here. So watch what happens in Canada, no matter where you live, because it's going to be an example to the rest, no matter what happens here. I don't know what the final solution to it all is, but I know that there's a lot of shit going on behind the scenes that's going to come to the surface real soon when it comes to what's going on here. So stay tuned. I'll cover it to the best that I can. And then let's go investigate the connections of the people that are in positions of power, authority, and trust in our society and see where that all links up. And then the information that we have, let's go find out and get as much specific documentation and receipts as possible. A lot of us have already been doing it, but let's keep doing it and let's do it even better. And then keep putting it out. And what I'm really happy to see is now even well-respected journalists and more mainstream journalists are starting to see the tide is turning in the public mind, and they already know things, and they're the good ones that have sort of been held by this captured system, held hostage, are starting to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and they're coming out. That's the same situation with these whistleblowers and insiders, and also the victims of these crimes. We need to set up an environment where we embolden them to come forward. So this way you don't have to just go through your government. You can skip that step and go directly to the victims of these crimes who are just paralyzed with fear and they don't want the scrutiny and the public ire that comes with it, and also the blowback from whatever the hell they've been mixed up with. So we need to set up an environment where it's more open for them and there's opportunity for them, and we need to encourage them. And also for the whistleblowers, they need to know there's never been a better time, and there won't be a better time to come out with what you know than right now. This would be your golden moment. This would be the perfect opportunity. If you're sitting on information and you're afraid, and I get it, this is the time. And make it public, make it transparent, and you will be surrounded with protection, I think. And I just think at this stage of the game, with what's at risk and what's at stake, we're at the risk of losing everything. Okay. So there's also a lot of lives lost, a lot of innocent lives lost, and a lot of innocent lives ruined by this criminal enterprise. Like, it's incalculable, the damage that's been done by these psychopaths in our midst. So in order to expose that evil, you got to shine a good light on it, and you got to create the opportunity for that light to shine. So if you're a whistleblower, if you're an insider, I don't care what agent, especially in Canada right now, if you know something about what, say, someone like Sam Cooper and some of these other journalists are talking about, go back them up. Go put the sauce out there. Start doing interviews. Hit me up, right? Or hit up anybody. I don't care if you come on my show. You can do your own channels. You can go put your own information out. And people that are victims of these types of crimes, it's got to be absolutely petrifying. It's got to be horrific to even have to revisit traumas that you've experienced. But there's something about timing, and the timing's written in the heavens right now, and there isn't a better time to get it off your chest and put it out there and just keep that going. Now, to the people that are researching and listening to the show, beware that there's going to be a lot of Pied Pipers coming out. There's going to be a lot of fakers coming out. That's just natural, right? There's going to be a lot of people that are just seeking attention. There's going to be also, if our country's as penetrated as we think, there's going to be a lot of bad actors and agents that know how to play pretend that are going to start pretending they're on your side, and they're going to start. I've experienced it directly. You have no idea behind the scenes what goes on sometimes. And so you got to watch out and use your discernment and use your intuition and your pattern recognition to do your best in that regard. None of us are trained professionals, but how did trained professionals become trained professionals? They worked at it. They learned shit. There's no reason you can't work at it and learn shit too. There's no reason we can't have the same level of knowledge as one of those mainstream journalists who used to do real journalism. There's no reason every citizen of this country can't be equipped with that level of scrutiny and knowledge about how to get a hold of classified information or information that's being hidden and how to get it out to the public. And that's a process that we can all learn and master together. And I see it as being all of us exposing the Epstein files. And about the Epstein files, one more thing. Everybody's like attaching their entire life force identity to these Epstein files. If they don't get released, I'm just done. Like, come on, are you serious? It's just like the thing I said about Jimmy Savile. These are just little glimmers of what's happening. The little pot. Oh, we caught that guy. Oh, we caught that guy. What about the people we didn't catch? The Epstein thing is just a twig on a branch of a gigantic tree sitting in a vast forest of evil. It needs to be exposed. It's a linchpin. It's like, oh, if we can get into that, oh, we can see the forest. We can get in and start to look. But don't rest your entire thing on that. Like, that's great. We're going to get there. But I think we're going to discover a hell of a lot more. What about the Peter Nygaard thing and the fashion moguls? Man, I could sit here all day. Keith Raniere. Like, we could go all day with how evil shows up in high places. And so, all in all, when I zoom out of it all and I think back over the years, I wake up every day with a smile on my face these days. It's nothing but good news to me, where I sit there and go, we're having this level of a conversation as a country. I can't even imagine, as a world, I can't even imagine the time 10, 15 years ago, not even 5 years ago. Like, it's exponential. It's bigger than all of us. This force of truth and sanity and reason that's calling us down on one side. That's like the white wolf. And then the dark wolf is trying to draw us back to confusion and fighting and chaos and depression and fear and panic and anxiety and shouting each other down. And right. So there's a bigger force at work. It's working very mysteriously through people we didn't expect. So clap your bloody hands already for it and get involved. That's the best way to cure your depression and your blackpilling and your worry and your fear about who do I trust and what do I do. Don't even worry about it. Don't even spend a second thought worrying about that shit. That'll take care of itself. That's out of our control right now. What is in your control? You, the person listening. And I'm talking to myself too. What's in my control? My control is to do my part and my thing and do what I can. And also, the personal side of this, the inner work that every single individual needs to do to deal with their own past trauma and their own inner corruption, right? So that we can become the best version of ourselves and then be inspired to create a better world for our children. That's where I'm at, right? I know we can't change the world because you just can't change it all by yourself, but you can make steps towards dealing with stuff going on within you that's going to make things better overall. And I just believe that when you're in the right energetic state and the right state of consciousness, you attract others that are as well. And you also permeate that out and it becomes like magnetic, right? And that creates a good energy. And we need that energy right now. That's how you rally the troops. That's how you get projects to become successful is those people that have that ability to take random people that would normally disagree and tear each other to bits on any other given day and get them all aligned on one goal and vision where we put aside all of our differences and we just get the bridge built, or we get the problem solved, or we route out the corruption, or we solve the case, right? We don't all have to agree on everything. I don't want a world where we just all agree on it. The consensus that the elites want, they want consensus. They want consensus trance. So you never rebel against their bullshit, right? I want us to think of it. I would want myself to be in the mindset of, well, I'm not going to be involved in any consensus. I'm going to be involved in doing what is in my heart to do, what is in my capacity to do, to help stop this assault on my nation, on the people that I love and care about, on the future of this world. You do what you can. And by doing that, you also realize there's a relationship between the inner and outer world. That the more you only focus on the outer world, the less you're focusing on the inner world. So we got to get good at doing both and realize there's actually a sort of reciprocal effect that's going on here at the end of the day. And once you understand what's in your capacity to change and what isn't, you can relax a little bit and just get involved and do what you can. And now you're proactive. Now you're putting your hands to good work. That's how you battle depression and anxiety. Getting proactive. And that's also, it just so happens that's how you conquer evil as well. So there's my message. That's what I wanted to share with you guys, plus some of these little digs. There's so much more to all of it, and I'll do more. I just sort of put this together for you. But go check it out. Go check out John Coleman's work. Go check out Cult of the Medics. I left tons of stuff in there that we could spend the rest of our lives untangling to try to figure out, right? And then let's just wait to see what happens. And as more information comes out, as more events unfold, we're there to get involved, share the truth, and work towards preserving the freedom that they're trying to take from us. And you start that from the inside out, not the other way around. So there you go, guys. I hope that helped you out on your Saturday evening. Definitely enjoyed being here. And I hope to see more of these investigations continuing. I am happy to see everybody's having some of the really important conversations that need to be had. And I expect to see more in the very near future. So I'll be back here soon as I can. My schedule's a little mixed up lately, so I can do this in my spare time. But stay tuned here. If you found value in this presentation, do me a solid, share it out, give me a like, throw a couple comments in there, and then please go and check out my page on Substack. I've got all my research there. I've got free stuff there. I've got stuff for people that want to support my work, and it does a lot to help me get my message out. If you would help me share this out. So thanks, everybody. Stay true. The truth is going to win, and we'll catch you again soon. Much love.